that again, please?
Good. Oh, tell me your story. So for me, I think that one of the most significant things about Netcast, or significant experience that I had in Netcast, was very early on. The first year we were looking for a church. We visited Netcast, and I remember the first sermon that I heard, Matt was talking about stepping on Legos and kicking down the door to his kid's room, and I just thought, well, this is the place for me. And you have to go into context behind that, but mostly just because it was a person who was talking about practical life and something that could apply to being a dad. But during that first year that we were here, it was like 5-6 years ago, Heather and I had just moved to Beverly shortly before then, and I was working locally, but we were only planning to be here temporarily. And we were really in this transitional part in our life where we were trying to figure out, okay, where's the next place? We've moved a lot. Where are we going to end up next? And in my career, I was actually thinking, like, is this the career I'm going to have? And so during that first year, we just fell in with the Netcast. We fell in with the community. And there were probably three times that I heard Matt preach about a passage from Acts about how God has preordained where we're supposed to be and when we're supposed to be there. And each time I heard that, it felt like I was being called to serve in Beverly, being called to keep doing what I was doing to help other people in the community. And I think as a couple, we talked about a lot, like, we're not supposed to move, we're not supposed to go somewhere else, we're not supposed to travel, but this is where God is calling us to be.
I think with each step that we've taken trying to figure out where we're supposed to be, we've very clearly heard from God that we're supposed to be here. Even buying our practice was something that happened during the Lent season, and was made very clear to us that we are supposed to be here, and God had his hand in that, in every transaction down the road. And so...
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, that's pretty cool. I didn't think about that. Like, I didn't pray much growing up, and not in church. I didn't really learn much about prayer. And during that time frame, I think we were called to pray in church, and I was like, I'm going to start doing this. And we were struggling, trying to figure out where we were going to be. And I committed to myself, so I'm going to pray every day for 30 days. I'm going to test God, I guess is what I was doing. But for me, it was just trying out prayer. Basically, just praying about where we were and where we were going to end up. And I think it's 17 or 16 days into that process, I went out to lunch with someone who invited me out to lunch, who I knew from childhood. We were driving by Briscoe, and I mentioned that I went to Netcast, and he started asking me about church and talking about how he had just been baptized recently. We went out to lunch. It was Friday, and he wasn't eating because he was fasting. And I said, well, you're taking me to lunch, why are you fasting? And he's like, well, if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. And we went to Steffi's, and I had lunch. He just watched me, and we talked for about Netcast. We talked about his church. We talked about him giving his testimony and getting baptized. We talked about how I hadn't been baptized, and at least as an adult, and how that was a bit of a struggle for me to consider that with my family and what would they feel about that. But how I really feel like I was being called to do something like that. And then at the end of that conversation, he's like, well, what are your plans for your future? I told him just what I told you, like, I don't really know where I'm supposed to be. And he's like, well, I want to give you my practice. And he basically, at that moment, he was like, you can have my practice. I'm going to give it to someone who's going to steward it, who's going to continue this legacy that I've created in this town. And it definitely wasn't like, here you go, it's given to you. But it felt that way. Like, I had been praying for that, for something to sort of to reveal itself to me. And it wasn't just like hey, here's a little hint. It was like platter, it's full. Feast.
That was our big sign.
Yeah, and it was like really big sign. It's been very much true in our practice. And and so we have that passage.
Sorry, I don't know what he's getting.
I don't know how to finish that. I don't know how to finish that story.
Yeah.
That's